why might there be a lack of alignment that could be an impediment to future growth right now?
I think that the difference in the different perspectives that we're facing is because everyone has a different responsibility um, as it relates to the organizational goals. We want to optimize one of our digital channels in regards to our online banking. If that's the obstacle we're facing, well, that deals with maybe 4 different departments,
Right.
and they all have a different book of business that they're responsible to. And so it's very easy for us, myself included, to only see it from the perspective that I'm responsible for and how that change in the short term could affect that, good or bad. And so you want to be protective of that. You want to uniquely bring your perspective to the table and hope that everyone gets it. But I think that with the bigger obstacle, or I guess the biggest thing, is we can all have a different perspective, but we all have to have the same goal. And I think
Yes.
that that's the kicker. It's really realizing that the conversation isn't about whose perspective is more right and wrong. I would venture to say probably everybody's perspective correct, because they have a responsibility that is unique to them or their team, but the goal is all the same.
So it's actually interesting. You're thinking, and that's the second step in human transformation. You see things differently, and when you begin to see things differently, that's going to then influence your thinking. So when you see different, you're going to think different. But what you've done in just this quick 5 minute conversation is you've already shifted the perspective from it's not about me, it's not about what everyone else thinks. That's an
Right.
internal perspective. And you use a very interesting word here. You use, we want to protect like what we're responsible for.
Mhm.
And so there is a little bit of maybe internal competition, shuffling and
Yeah.
whatnot. But on the flip side, if we transform that competitive perspective into a mindset of collaboration, it's the collaboration that leads to growth. I heard something on the point of collaboration versus cooperation. Cooperation is when you're working well together. And I think everyone
Mhm.
watching and listening would agree you, we have to work well together if we
Right.
want to make progress. The difference between cooperation and collaboration, though, is collaboration. Of course, you need cooperation for collaboration to work well together, but the end state of collaboration is you're now not just working well together, you're co-creating together.
Yeah.
And to
Yeah.
bring your thinking back into this, it's not about us. It's about the external perspective, the
Yeah.
perspective of the member or of the account holder. And how often do we or do we not bring the external perspective of the account holder into our internal decision making, goal driven processes?
Right.
And that is, I would say, oftentimes the big breakthrough that we can experience. And you've experienced this yourself. I mean, think back on the digital secret shopping studies that you have been
Oh,
a
yeah.
part of over the years, and how you bring in that objective external, and they're not even members, these are prospective members or prospective account holders who do not have a relationship with the organization, and so there's no emotive affinity or tie, so it's even
Right.
more objective. I mean, think back, how has seeing the external perspective helped to influence your thinking differently once you understand what others are experiencing and feeling? And I think that's the key point here, what they're feeling through a digital journey.
I think that you bring up a really good point by bringing me back to that place. I think that that experience and that exercise actually forever changed how I approach collaborative projects for the sake of conversation. Um, the reality situation is, if you think about the buying journey as it relates to the consumer, it changes the individual perspective. So I might want to do something a specific way because it's comfortable to me and my experiences. However, what I can't account for is that my unique perspective is not the entire world's perspective.
Correct.
So when we went through those mystery shops and we heard people who look like the customers that we serve, but have absolutely no connection, say what's important to them, you get to hear something that you don't get to hear every day. The reality of the situation is while you may have 3 or 4 different departments in the room, we all work for the same company. So we have some form of a semblance of thinking similarly. You have someone come in from the outside and then they share their perspectives like, oh, wow, that's a fresh take I never thought about. So that one exercise that we did however many odd years ago has kind of shaped how I pitch ideas when we're working together collaboratively. And so one exercise that I try to employ, I try my best to employ, maybe I'm not the greatest at it at all times, but first of all is listen to everyone share. Listen to what they're saying and listen for key points that might be them either speaking from personal experience or from the experience of them working with members and understanding something that I don't have um, experience or privy knowledge to. But I ultimately try to bring it back to, hey, we're all as at the end of the day, we're all consumers somewhere. How do you best want to do business? What actions or features or whatever word you want to fill in the blank there would have you seen at another place that you did a buying journey with that you like that actually made a great experience for me. It was seamless. I will love that in my everyday life. And so I try to bring that the shopping cart analogy that we use when we talk about, Amazon. You know you want something, you have the money for it, but you're not ready to commit.
Yeah.
That perspective and being able to tell that to our creative team is like, hey, this is how people are buying these days. We live in a day and age where it takes one click and it's at your door in 2 days for most in most cases. So how can we get as close to that as possible and really listening to that what our customers are saying, like, how can we match what they're saying as it relates to us, but what's realistic for us? I think that's the other part about it, is even if you want to do something because it's great and it seems easy, you can't do everything at once. You can't do everything that everyone's doing because then what's the point of like there's no individuality in that. So
Right.
it's really getting hyper focused on what you're trying to do and the best way to solve a problem for your members.
And I think that comes back the best way to solve the problem for the members or solve the problem for the account holder. Because if you think about what you're explaining here, the internal quote unquote conflict, getting aligned around a common goal that's bigger than us as individuals, whether they be individuals as human beings or individuals as a team. Because let's just say there's 3 4 different key stakeholders, i.e. teams, that are a part of this experience. And coming back to the idea of optimizing the online banking experience, how often do we bring the fifth element, great movie by the way, bring the fifth element, the fifth key stakeholder into that dialogue, into that discussion, and that is the voice of the member, or that is the voice of the account holder. And they don't necessarily have to be involved in the day-to-day decision making, but
Right.
I think we should provide a forum to where we can get that feedback, can get that response. And so, even thinking about digital secret shopping from an external buying journey perspective, there also might be a way to look at digital secret shopping from an online banking back end servicing quote unquote perspective. And this
Yep.
idea of expectation or experience setting from other experiences, digital experiences, to use your example, Amazon, well, that is going to directly influence how we perceive our other digital experiences. It's
Right.
a benchmarking, if you will. And so, if we come back to these 4 different steps for human transformation to guide human transformation first and foremost internally, so that we can guide that transformation externally, we see things differently through learning, asking good questions, listening, learning through observation. That's going to then influence our thinking.